God. Amen. Well, before we're going to look at a video here a little bit, because some of us remember Zacchaeus' story from when we came to Sunday school or vacation Bible school. Often we learned it in a song. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree, and he had motions and all that stuff. But few of us probably know much about Jericho, the town where Jesus came from, or where Zacchaeus came from. And Jericho has an interesting history. It was the first city that the Israelites took over, and the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. That song, there's a song about that too. When they entered from the promised land after they had escaped slavery in Egypt, and they were claiming, after they'd wandered for 40 years, and they were claiming the promised land, Jericho is the first city that they claimed. And so that's one important thing. And also, it was a thriving metropolis in Jesus' time. And so when the Bible says that Zacchaeus was rich, he was really rich. And so that's an important note, because the Bible doesn't always talk about how rich people are, but it notes that Zacchaeus not only was a notorious sinner according to the crowd, but he was very, very rich. And so I thought it'd be fun for us to look at a video I found about traveling through our faith that tells about Jericho, and it tells about what happened right before Jesus met Zacchaeus. So let's watch this video and learn a little history this morning as we begin.
At the time of Jesus, Jericho was known as an oasis city. In fact, Herod the Great built his winter palace here. You can see the remains of that palace beneath me, down below. Now, he built it here in Jericho because of the city's warm climate and the numerous freshwater springs. The Bible calls Jericho the city of palm trees. This is one of the places that Jesus made a point to visit on his trips to Jerusalem. His final journey to the region was no different.
Jericho is about 15 miles northeast of Jerusalem, near the Jordan River. It's known as one of the oldest inhabited cities in the world. It's also the first city that the Israelites conquered after they crossed the Jordan River and arrived in Canaan after their escape from Egypt some 1,400 years earlier.
Today, Jericho is located in the Palestinian territories. Its current population is about 20,000. And as you can see, the ruins of the ancient city lie among houses and hotels.
But along with the rich and powerful, homeless outcasts often lined the roads in and out of Jericho because it was a good place to encounter the well-to-do traders and political elites. The Gospel of Luke tells us, as Jesus drew near to Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging, and hearing a crowd going by, he inquired what this meant. They told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by, and he cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped. What do you want me to do for you? The blind beggar said, Lord, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, recover your sight. Your faith has made you well. And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, gave praise to God. Luke 18:35 through 43.
In addition to being an oasis city, Jericho was a border town, a lucrative hub for agriculture and commerce, and as a result, became a key center for Roman tax collection. Now, returning to the Gospel of Luke, we learn that a man named Zacchaeus was the chief tax collector for the region of Jericho. Although he was a native Judean, he had sold out and become part of the oppressive and despised Roman tax machine. Now, the Romans needed local tax collectors and found it advantageous to hire locals like Zacchaeus so that they could collect money from their kinfolk. In return, these tax collectors would pledge their allegiance to Rome, charge a hefty commission, and in most cases, they would skim a little extra off the top.
As a result, they were despised, and that stigma was so well known that Jesus even used it as part of an earlier teaching on love during his Sermon on the Mount. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? Matthew 5:46.
Zacchaeus was the chief tax collector of a very lucrative trade hub here at Jericho. And as a result, he had gotten rich and powerful at the expense of his own people. He was considered to be a traitor. While Jesus was passing through Jericho on his final trip to Jerusalem, a large crowd had gathered. The Gospel of Luke tells us that Zacchaeus was a small man, and so he ran up ahead of the crowd and climbed a sycamore tree like this one so that he could get a better look at Jesus as he came passing by. Now, here's a little tidbit for all you dendrologists out there. The sycamore tree, or the Ficus sycamoris, is actually a kind of a fig tree. In fact, it's one of the oldest species of trees in the world. And if you're keeping score at home, 50 points for anyone who knew that dendrology was the study of trees. I had to look it up. Now, locals claim that the remains of this tree is the actual tree that Zacchaeus climbed when Jesus came through Jericho. But it's impossible to know for sure.
And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." Luke 19:5.
The disciples maybe cringed a bit. The crowd grumbled. This odd, tree-climbing traitor was a tax collector, after all. Of all the places Jesus could go for dinner, why did it have to be the home of Zacchaeus? But as we've learned in this series of Drive-Through History, Jesus was always looking for ways to teach lessons to his followers. And in this gospel story, he wanted to show Zacchaeus and all the other onlookers who were witnessing this encounter that the forgiveness that he spoke of was for everyone, even tax collectors, the so-called worst of sinners. In other words, the seemingly unthinkable was now possible.
And Jesus said to Zacchaeus, "Today salvation has come to this house, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." Luke 19:9 and 10. So right up to the end of his ministry, the Gospels tell of Jesus bringing hope to common people, giving sight to the blind, forgiving the greatest of sinners, and teaching a new way. The time in Jericho marked the end of his ministry, and now it was time for the long, uphill walk from Jericho to Jerusalem.
That just gave you a little taste, and someone at first service said they might want to go see Jericho sometime for themselves. They had no idea how beautiful it was and how important it is in history. But have you seen, we're talking about being lost today, and have you seen any lost people recently? Have you seen anybody wandering around lost? You know lost people. We were down in Bloomington and we saw somebody who was really lost in that they were trying to go down the wrong way on one of the major, on Veterans Parkway that goes through Bloomington. That's a big road, and we were praying for nobody to get in an accident since those people were clearly lost. But when we used to live and drive the interstates a lot, we would, in Peoria, you'd see people doing what we called the 3-lane crossover. They'd be all the way over in the right lane, and they'd realize, oh, here's my exit, or they'd all the way over in the left lane, and there's my exit, and they just, there they go, straight over there. And if you follow Pastor Mary around a little bit, when I'm in new areas, you'll see me doing the same thing. One thing I do is not that. You'll see me driving real slow because I'm looking. I know my GPS says this, but right when you want to get to the place, then your GPS changes, or you might lose your signal or whatever. So I'm always looking real close and driving slow to try to find things. And that's one indication that people are lost. But people that we're talking about today being lost, you might not know that they're lost. Now, yes, Zacchaeus was a notorious sinner, but he was a rich and powerful man. And so rich and powerful people have a lot of influence. Because we wouldn't think of Jeff Bezos as being lost. Would you? The guy who founded Amazon, you wouldn't think of him being lost, or Elon Musk. We don't think of those people as being lost, and yet they could be. I mispronounce everything all the time, so you guys know what I'm talking about. So do you think of them as being lost? And yet, if you're spending your money to go just to take a quick trip in the air, I think that we could argue whether they're lost or not. And Zacchaeus might not look lost on the outside. He had all the worldly things that you would want. And yet, clearly, he didn't have the one thing that he needed. He didn't have a connection with God. He had lost his connection with God because of his occupation. When he chose to become a tax collector, he automatically became an outsider and was cast out in his faith journey. He was not welcome into the church. He wasn't. Now, we don't cast people out of churches anymore. I don't know what you'd really have to do to get cast out of a church pretty much anymore. There are a few things probably. Now, I've read notes from like the 1800s when a guy was feeding his chickens on a Sunday and he got cast out of the church for a while until he repented. But, we don't cast people out too often of a church. But back then, if you did, you were ostracized. You were not welcome. And they called you notorious. I mean, that was a pretty bad sin. So you can think about him being outcast, but I'll tell you one thing I've learned over the years in my ministry. You'd be amazed at how many people that I visit at the end stages of their life, and I've seen them sitting in the pew every Sunday. I've seen them singing their hymns and songs of praise every Sunday. I've seen them faithfully giving every Sunday, and I go visit them at this end stage of their life journey, and they are afraid that they are not going to make it into heaven. And you know how heartbreaking it is for me as a pastor to know these beloved people that have been so good to me don't have assurance of salvation? And so that tells me a lot of people sitting in the pews are lost. They don't have the assurance of salvation that Jesus loves us. And I agree, it's hard. Even my own dad, when he was nearing death, he's like, he didn't want the pastor to come visit him. My husband and I are both pastors, but he had his own pastor, and he was too sick for the pastor to come visit him. And after he made me asked me to make the call and whatever, and canceled the appointment, which I did. He goes, "Now, do you think I'm not going to get to heaven because I didn't let the pastor come visit me?" I was like, "No." That has nothing to do with it. I tell you, if my dad is not in heaven, nobody's in heaven, because he was a wonderful person of faith. So being lost can happen, and you can feel lost at different times of your life, and that's a painful place to be. Sure, it's fun to do games like Where's Waldo? Now, I realize I'm dating myself again, because I don't know that people look at Waldo books anymore, but when my heyday, these were fun to look at because you had to find Waldo. He's up here in this outfit. And if you could see this picture closer, you could find him in here somewhere and see where he's at. But that's kind of fun to find the lost. But we don't seem to think it's so fun as people of faith to look and find people who are lost, even though there have to be plenty of people in our lives that don't feel a connection to God, and plenty of opportunities for us to share God with them. And yet we're reluctant to share the faith with them. People have a longing for God. They have a longing for God in their lives, like Zacchaeus did. Zacchaeus was wealthy. He had all the money he wanted, but he did not have God. In fact, he did not think God knew about him. He wanted to take a look at God from the outside. And nowadays, it's super easy to do that, isn't it? Because we have online services. Anybody can take a look at our church. Hi, everybody online. Anybody can take a look at our church anytime they want. They can look at the past stuff. They can watch, and you can look at any church basically around the world. You have that ability. If you can get online, you can do it. And you don't have to come visit. You don't have to have them give you pressure, or write down your name, or talk to you. None of that stuff has to happen. You can look on the outside, kind of like Zacchaeus was. And I hope people do. I'm glad they do, because I know this truth. When we're looking on the outside at God, God's looking on the inside at us. God is already looking at you, friends, whether you can see God looking at you or not. Jesus knew Zacchaeus. He knew Zacchaeus. And before Zacchaeus repented, Jesus wanted to go to Zacchaeus' house because it was time for Zacchaeus to have a change. Now, when Jesus shows up at Zacchaeus' house, Zacchaeus is so convicted by the love God has for him that he knows his name, he's willing to come see him, he's willing to eat at his house, that he makes a change. And what kind of change does Zacchaeus make? What is Zacchaeus' biggest sin? His greed, right? Money is his biggest issue. So Zacchaeus he gives away half of his wealth. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that Jeff gives away half of Amazon's wealth? We'll take some, right, for the poor. He gives away half of his wealth, and then he says, whoever I've cheated, and you know there had to be plenty of people, I'm going to do restoration or restitution 4 times. Now, you may have a problem with somebody in your life that you need to make what we call restitution or try to make it up to them, and it may not have anything to do with money. You may need to, maybe you have withheld something from people or taken stuff from people like time or a listening ear or attention. These are things that when we want to make restitution to people that maybe we can do, or maybe you've spoken badly about someone. Well, you know how you can make restitution? For every bad thing you said about them, you can say 4 times the good things about them. Now, for me, I have a person that's a real thorn in my flesh. I can't even imagine trying to say 4 times good things. That's all I would be talking about is how good this person is, because I've not been so pleasant to them. But that's how we do it. That provides healing for us. And that's part of the change that we can have when we encounter Christ. Because when God finds us, he loves us where we are, but he doesn't leave us there. That's the awesome thing of the truth of the gospel. We are transformed into something better, into something good. And so if you find yourself lost, know that when you're found, you might have a change coming. It'll be a change for good like Zacchaeus had. When he realized God's great love for him in Jesus, that he was glad to give that up. And I can't imagine how hard that would be to do, but he was glad to do it. Have you ever had somebody want to come to your house? Now, some of us women are going like, don't do it. But I want to tell you about when I grew up. When I grew up, my house was the place when little kids, we'd be playing out in the neighborhood and stuff, and they'd say, let's go to your house, Mary. And I'd be like, no. Why do we always have to go to my house? It's boring there. I want to go to your house. I didn't realize at that time, because it took a while before they had to get permission for me to come, for them to have a guest, and everything was so neat at their house. But you see, at my house, it wasn't like that. Now, my mom, she always kept the counters clean and the tables clean, the stove was clean, and the food, she was always real picky about food sanitation and stuff like that. But the floors in the kitchen, yeah, they got clean. Not all every day, but most of the time. I wouldn't eat off the floor. We didn't have a 5-second rule in our house. If it hit the floor, you let it go. Well, we had a dog too, so that didn't help. And also, my mom, she did not really care about housekeeping. That wasn't her big priority. So there was always clutter and toys. I had three brothers and and we also always had different people tromping in our house. And so when you went to my mom's house, it was not perfect and neat. It was an old farmhouse. It wasn't that fancy by any stretch of the imagination, but you were welcome there. When I walked in the door, no matter what time, I didn't call ahead and say, Mom, can we come over? When they finally talked me into it, we just came in. We come tromping in that house, and the first thing my mom would say, do you need something to drink? Do you want a snack? And then we'd smell something, because she'd probably been cooking something delicious. So we'd have some cookies, or maybe she'd have fresh grapes or whatever. We'd always have a snack or something, watermelon. I can remember all sorts of things I ate with my friends. And then we'd just go do whatever we want. And I didn't understand, because for a long time, they always insisted we come to our house. But finally, when I got to go to people's houses and I grew up a little bit, I finally realized, wait a minute. I got to be real careful when I come to these people's houses. I got to make sure my feet are clean. You didn't have to do any of that stuff at my house. My house, my mom was like, just come on in, and everybody did. But I realized that was such a privilege that these people felt welcomed at our house. And that was a gift my mom gave. But it was wonderful that they wanted to go to my house. And see, that's the way Zacchaeus felt when Jesus wanted to go to his house. Now, of course, Zacchaeus had servants, and it was really nice to go to his house. But isn't it nice when people want to go to your house, when they don't care if your house is a mess, that they just want to show up? That's what I tell you. If I come visit you, believe me, I've seen worse at my own house. Now, I try to keep my house, because that color was a little too much for me growing up because I got a little ADHD. But so the parsonage, as they will tell you on Tuesday after they inspect it, it's not looking like my mom's house did. But it's probably not as clean as some of your houses. But you're welcome to come. And how nice it is to come, isn't it? It's nice to feel like you can come to someone's house. And I like it that people might want to come to our house. I had 2 little kids at one of my churches, and they would ride their bikes. And one day they stopped in and they said, "Pastor, can we have a drink? We're so tired," because they've been riding all over the place. And of course, I was home for a change, and I gave them a drink, of course. They were welcome in, and they knew that. And Zacchaeus knew it. It's a wonderful thing that we are welcome in. Well, friends, God wants to be in your house. He knows how messy it is. He knows how notorious you are. He knows that the Bible isn't sticking out. You know, he's not looking for the Bibles laying out on your coffee table. I guarantee you there was no Bible laying out on any coffee table at my house growing up. Now, we had Bibles all over the place, but they were red. They were stuck full of stuff because my dad loved to read different kinds of Bibles, and he was a collector of clutter, as I call it, stuck paper, pieces of paper, and all sorts of things. My mom, too. So, yeah, there were Bibles around, but you wouldn't necessarily see them when you came to our house. I hope better they saw the heart. And Jesus is looking at the heart of Zacchaeus, and he knows Zacchaeus is lost, and Zacchaeus needs to be welcomed. He needs to know he's welcomed in. And friends, I'll tell you, you are welcomed in. Some of you feel lost today. I know you do. And God loves you. God is wanting to be at your house. God does not care about that stuff. He wants to be with you. He thinks you're kind of amazing. And he doesn't want you to stay in whatever trap you're in whatever notoriousness you might have going on in your life. He wants to free you. He wants you to become more hospitable and more welcoming. And he wants to let you know that you're not on the outside. That's what he told Zacchaeus. You're not on the outside. Everybody in the kingdom of God, if you're willing, can be on the inside. And it's wonderful that we have this beautiful church, but how many people feel welcome coming in here? We need to go out and know that there are people lost out there. And if we wonder, what can I share with people? What can I tell them about? You know, if you're like me, I don't want to tell them about some of the mean things I've done. I don't want to be telling people about how ornery I was growing up or this and that. Because I've had people that I did tell that stuff to, and then that's all I heard about. "Oh, Pastor, you were such an ornery little kid, blah, blah, blah." Well, I don't want to hear about that stuff, so I'm not comfortable always sharing all that. No, instead, we can share the stories of Zacchaeus in the Bible. That's one wonderful gift of the Bible. You want to talk about someone notorious? Well, there was Zacchaeus, and yet Jesus called him by name and went to his house. So, friends, you can easily help share the stories of the kingdom and invite people who are lost in. That's our job. Our job is to seek and save the lost. That's what Jesus came. And when we ourselves know we're found, then we can go out in the assurance and joy and hope of faith and share that with others. How wonderful it is when lives are transformed for good because they met Jesus. And we are to introduce them to him. So today, friends, it's my prayer that you know you're found and that you can share good news with others, so that they know that they're found and that they're welcome. Because that's our duty as people of faith. Amen. Amen.